This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Ted DeLorme in Fort Mill, South Carolina, during June 2006. The Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. Edited by D. Laing Purves. This reading is based on the book The Canterbury Tales and Other Poems. The original text contains poems by Chaucer and a lot of notes and explanations by the editor. To view these, please click on the Gutenberg eText link on the LibriVox catalog page of The Canterbury Tales. The Knight's Tale. Whilom, as olde stories tellen us, there was a duke that highte Theseus. Of Athens he was lord and governor, and in his time such a conqueror that greater was there none under the sun. Full many a rich country had he won. What with his wisdom and his chivalry, he conquered all the reign of Feminy. That Whilom was yclept Scythia, and wedded the Queen Hippolyta, and brought her home with him to his country, with muchel glory and great solemnity, and eke her younger sister Emily. And thus with victory and with melody let I this worthy duke to Athens ride, and all his host in arms him beside. And certes, if it n'ere too long to hear, I would have told you fully the manner how wonnen was the reign of Feminy by Theseus and by his chivalry, and of the great battle for the nonce betwixt Athenis and the Amazons, and how assieged was Hippolyta, the fair hardy queen of Scythia, and of the feast that was at her wedding, and of the tempest at her homecoming. But all these things I must as now forbear. I have got what? A large field to ear, and weak be the oxen in my plow. The remnant of my tale is long enow. I will not letten eke none of this rout. Let every fellow tell his tale about, and let's see now who shall the supper win. There, as I left, I will again begin. This duke, of whom I make mention, when he was come almost unto the town, in all his weal and in his moste pride, he was ware, and he cast his eye aside, where that there kneeled in the highe way a company of ladies tway and tway, each after other, clad in clothes black. But such a cry and such a woe they make, that in this world n'is creature living that hearde such another waymenting. And of this crying would they never stenten, till they the rainis of his bridal henten. What folk be ye that at mine homecoming perturben so my feast with crying? Quoth Theseus. Have ye so great envy of mine honor, and that thus complain and cry? Or who hath you misboten or offended? Do telle me, if it may be amended. And why that ye be clad thus all in black? The oldest lady of them all then spake, when she had swooned with a deadly cheer, that it was ruth for to see or hear. She said, Lord, to whom fortune hath given victory, and as a conqueror to liven, naught grieveth us your glory and your honor, but we beseechen mercy and succor. Have mercy on our woe and our distress. Some drop of pity, through thy gentleness, upon us wretched women let now fall. For certes, Lord, there is none of us all that hath not been a duchess or a queen. Now we be caitiffs, as it is well seen. Thanked be fortune and her false weal, that none estate insureth to be well. And certes, Lord, to biden your presence here in this temple of the goddess Clemence, we have been waiting all this fortnight. Now help us, Lord, since it lies in thy might. I, wretched wight, that weep and wail thus, was whilom wife to King Capaneus, that staff at Thebes, cursed be that day. And all we that be in this array, and making all this lamentation, we lost in all our husbands in that town, while that the siege thereabouten lay. And yet the old Creon well away, that lord is now of Thebes the city, fulfilled of ire and of iniquity. He for despite and for his tyranny, to do the dead bodies villainy of all our lords, which that had been a slaw, hath all the bodies on an heap ydraw, and will not suffer them by none assent, neither to be buried nor ybrent, but maketh hounds eat them in despite. And with that word, without more respite, they fallen gruff, and cried piteously, have on us wretched women some mercy, and let our sorrows sinken in thine heart. This gentle duke down from his courser start, with hearte piteous, when he heard them speak. Him thoughte that his heart would all to break, when he saw them so piteous and so mate, that whilom weren of so great estate. And in his arms he them all uphent, and them comforted in full good intent, and swore his oath, as he was true knight, he would do so faithfully his might upon the tyrant Creon them to wreak, that all the people of Greece should speak how Creon was of Theseus y-served, as he had his death full well deserved. And right anon, without more abode, his banner he displayed, and forth he rode to Thebes ward, and all his host beside. No, ne'er Athens would he go nor ride, nor take his ease fully half a day, but onward on his way that night he lay, and sent anon Hippolyta the queen, and Emily her youngest sister sheen, unto the town of Athens for to dwell, and forth he writ, there is no more to tell. The red statue of Mars, with spear and targe, so shineth in his white banner large, that all the fieldes glitter up and down, and by his banner borne is his pennon of gold full rich, in which there was ybeat the Minotaur, which that he slew in Crete. Thus writ this duke, thus writ this conqueror, and in his host of chivalry the flower, till that he came to Thebes and alight fair in a field, there as he thought to fight. But shortly for to speaken of this thing with Creon, which that was of Thebes king, he fought, and slew him manly as a knight, in plain bataille, and put his folk to flight. And by assault he won the city after, and rent adown both wall and spar and rafter, and to the ladies he restored again the bodies of their husbands that were slain, to do obsequies, as was then the guise. But it were all too long for to devise that great clamour and the waymenting which the ladies made at the brenning of the bodies, and the great honour that Theseus the noble conqueror did to the ladies when they from him went. But shortly for to tell is mine intent. When that this worthy duke, this Theseus, had Creon slain, and wonnen Thebes thus, still in the field he took all night his rest, and did with all the country as him lest to ransack in the tas of bodies dead, them for to strip of harness and to weed. The pillars did their business and cure after the battle and discomfiture. And so befell that in the tas they found, through girt with many a grievous bloody wound, two younge knights ligging by and by, both in one arms, wrought full richly, of which two Arcita hight that one, and he that other hight Palamon. Not fully quick nor fully dead they were, but by their coat armor and by their gear the heralds knew them well in special, as those that weren of the blood royal, of Thebes, and of Sistren too y-born. Out of the tas the pillars have them torn, and have them carried soft unto the tent of Theseus, and he full soon them sent to Athens, for to dwellen in prison perpetually, he an old no ransom. And when this worthy duke had thus done, he took his host, and home he writ anon, with laurel crowned as a conqueror, and there he lived in joy and in honor term of his life. What needeth wordes mo'? And in a tower, in anguish and in woe, dwellen this Palamon and eke Arcita. For evermore there may no gold them quite. Thus passed year by year and day by day, till it fell one morn of May, that Emily, that fairer was to seen than is the lily upon his stalk green, and fresher than the May with flowers new, for with the rose colour strove her hue. I note which was the finer of them two. Ere it was day, as she was wont to do, she was arisen and already dight. For May will have no sluggardy a night. The season pricketh every gentle heart, and maketh him out of his sleep to start, and saith, "Arise and do thine observance." This maketh Emily have remembrance to do honor to May, and for to rise. Y-clothed was she fresh for to devise. Her yellow hair was braided in a tress behind her back, a yard along, I guess, and in the garden at the sun uprist she walketh up and down where as her list. She gathereth flowers, party white and red, to make a sotel garland for her head. And as an angel heavenly she sung, the greate tower that was so thick and strong, which of the castle was the chief dungeon, whereas these knights weren in prison, of which I told you, and telle shall, was even joinant to the garden wall. There, as this Emily had her playing, bright was the sun and clear that morrowing. And Palamon, this woeful prisoner, as was his wont by leave of his jailer, was risen, and roamed in a chamber on high, in which he all the noble city sigh, and eke the garden full of branches green, there as this fresh Emilia the sheen was in her walk, and roamed up and down. This sorrowful prisoner, this Palamon, went in his chamber roaming to and fro, and to himself complaining of his woe, that he was born, full oft he said, alas! And so befell by adventure or cas, that through a window thick of many a bar, of iron great, and square as any spar, he cast his eyes upon Emilia, and therewithal he blent and cried, "Ah!" as though he stungen were unto the heart. And with that cry Arcita anon upstart, and said, cousin mine, what aileth thee, that art so pale and deadly for to see? Why criedst thou? Who hath thee done offence? For God's love, take all in patience. Our prison, for it may none other be, Fortune hath given us this adversity. Some wick aspect of disposition of Saturn by some constellation hath given us this, although we had it sworn. So stood the heaven when that we were born. We must endure. This is the short and plain. This Palamon answered and said again, Cousin, forsooth of this opinion thou hast a vain imagination. This prison caused me not for to cry, but I was hurt right now through mine eye into mine heart, that will my bane be. The fairness of the lady that I see yond in the garden roaming to and fro is cause of all my crying and my woe. I note were she be woman or goddess, but Venus is it soothly as I guess. And therewithal on knees adown he fill and said, Venus, if it be your will you in this garden thus to transfigure before me, sorrowful wretched creature, out of this prison help that we may scape, and if so be our destiny be shape, by etern word to dine in prison, of our lineage have some compassion, that is so low brought by tyranny. And with that word our seat gonna spy, whereas this lady roamed to and fro. And with that sight her beauty hurt him so, that if that Palamon was wounded sore, Arcite was hurt as much as he, or more. And with a sigh he said piteously, The fresh beauty slayeth me suddenly, of her that roameth yonder in the place. And but I have her mercy and her grace, that I may see her at the leaste way, I am but dead. There is no more to say. This Palamon, when he these wordes heard, dispiteously he looked and answered, Whether sayest thou this in earnest or in play? Nay, quoth Arcite, in earnest, by my fay. God help me so, me lustful ill to play. This Palamon gan knit his brows tway. It were, quoth he, to thee no great honor for to be false, nor for to be traitor to me, that am thy cousin and thy brother, is sworn full deep, and each of us to other, that never for to dien in the pain, till that the death departen shall us twain, neither of us in love to hinder other, nor in none other case, my lieve brother, but that thou shouldest truly farther me in every case, as I should farther thee. This was the thine oath, and mine also certain. I wot it well, thou darest it not withsayn. Thus art thou of my counsel out of doubt, and now thou wouldest falsely be about to love my lady, whom I love and serve, and ever shall, until my hearte sterve. Now certes, false Arcite, thou shalt not so. I loved her first, and told thee my woe. As to my counsel and my brother sworn to farther me, as I have told beforn, but which thou art bounden as a knight to help me, if it lie in thy might, or elles art thou false, I dare well sayn. This Arcita full proudly spake again. Thou shalt, quoth he, be rather false than I, and thou art false, I tell thee utterly, for paramour I loved her first ere thou. What wilt thou say? Thou wist it not right now, whether she be a woman or a goddess. Thine is affection of holiness, and mine is love, as to a creature, for which I told thee mine aventure. As to my cousin and my brother sworn, I pose that thou lov'st her beforn. Wist thou not well the old clerkes saw, that who shall give a lover any law? Love is a greater law, by my pan, than may be given to any earthly man. Therefore positive law, and such decree, is broke away, for love in each degree. A man must needes love, maugre his head. He may not flee it, though he should be dead. All be she, maid or widow, or else wife. And eke it is not likely all thy life to standen in her grace, no more than I. For well thou wouldst thyself verily, that thou and I be damned to prison perpetual. Us gaineth no ransom. We strive as did the houndes for the bone. They fought all day, and yet their part was none. There came a kite, while that they were so wroth, and bare away the bone betwixt them both. And therefore at the kinge's court, my brother, each man for himself, there is no other. Love if thee list, for I love, and I shall and soothly leve, brother. This is all. Here in this prison musten we endure, and each of us take his aventure. Great was the strife and long between these tway, if that I had leisure for to say. But to the effect, it happened on a day, to tell it you as shortly as I may. A worthy duke that hight Perithus, that fellow was to the Duke Theseus, since thilke day that they were children light, was come to Athens his fellow to visit, and for to play, as he was wont to do. For in this world he loved no man so, and he loved him as tenderly again. So well they loved, as old book sayn, that when that one was dead, soothly to sayn, his fellow went and sought him down in hell. But of that story list me not to write. Duke Perithus loved well Arcite, and had him known at Thebes year by year. And finally at request and prayer of Perithus, without ransom, Duke Theseus let him out of prison, freely to go where him list all over, in such a guise as I tellen shall. This was the forward plain to indite betwixt Theseus and him Arcite, that if so were that Arcite were found ever in his life, by day or night, one stound in any country of this Theseus, and he were caught, it was accorded thus, that with a sword he should lose his head. But took his leave, and homeward he him sped. Let him beware, his neck lieth to wed. How great a sorrow suffereth now Arcite. The death he feeleth through his hearte smite. He weepeth and waileth, crieth piteously. To slay himself he waiteth privily. He said, alas, the day that I was born, now is my prison worse than beforn. Now is me shape eternally to dwell, not in purgatory, but right in hell. Alas, that ever I knew Perithus, for elles had I dwelt with Theseus, y-fettered in his prison evermo', then had I been in bliss, and not in woe. Only the sight of her whom that I serve, though that I never may her grace deserve, would have sufficed right enough for me. O dear cousin Palamon, quoth he, thine is the victory of this aventure, full blissfully in prison to endure. In prison, Nay, certes, in paradise well hath fortune turned thee the dice, that hast the sight of her, and I the absence. For possible is, since thou hast her presence, and art a knight, a worthy and an able, that by some case, since fortune is changeable, thou mayst to thy desire sometime attain. But I that am exiled and barren of all grace, and in so great despair, that there n'is earth, water, fire, nor air, nor creature that of them maked is, that may help nor comfort in this. Well ought I sterve in one hope and distress. Farewell my life, my lust, and my gladness. Alas, why plainen men so in commune of purveyance of God or of fortune, that giveth them full oft in many a guise, well better than they can themselves devise. Some man desireth for to have riches, that cause is of his murder or great sickness. And some man would out of his prison fain, that in his house is of his manes slain. Infinite harmes be in this matter. We wot never what thing we pray for here. We fare as he that drunk is as a mouse. A drunken man wot well he hath an house, but he wot not which is the right way thither. And to a drunken man the way is slither. And certes in this world so fare we seeke fast after felicity, but we go wrong full often truly. Thus we may say in all, and namely I, that weened and had a great opinion, that if I might escape from prison, then had I been in joy and perfect hell. For where now I am exiled from my well, since that I may not see you, Emily, I am but dead, there is no remedy. Upon that other side, Palamon, when that he wist our sight was gone, much sorrow maketh, that the great tower resoundeth of his yelling and clamour. The pure fetters on his shinnes great were of his bitter salted tears wet. Alas, quoth he, our sight, cousin mine, of all our strife, God wot, the fruit is thine. Thou walkest now in Thebes at thy large, and of my woe thou givest little charge. Thou mayest, since thou hast wisdom and manhead, assemble all the folk of our kindred, and make a war so sharp on this country, that by some aventure or some treaty thou mayst have her to lady and to wife, for whom that I must needs lose my life. For as by way of possibility, since thou art at thy lodge of prison free, and art a lord, great is thine avantage, more than is mine, that sterve here in a cage. For I must weep and wail while that I live, with all the woe that prison may me give, and eke with pain that love me gives also, that doubles all my torment and my woe. Therewith the fire of jealousy upstart within his breast, and hent him by the heart so woodly, that he like was to behold the box tree, or the ashes dead and cold. Then said, O cruel goddess, that govern this world with binding of your word etern, and written in the table of adamant your parliament and your eternal grant. What is mankind more unto you hold than is the sheep that rooketh in the fold? For slain is man, right as another beast, and dwelleth eke in prison and arrest, and hath sickness and great adversity, and oftentimes guilteless. Pardie, what governess is in your prescience, that guiltless tormenteth innocence, and yet increaseth this all my penance, that man is bounden to his observance, for Godde's sake, to letten of his will, whereas a beast may all his lust fulfill. And when a beast is dead, he hath no pain, but man after his death must weep and plain, though in this world he have care and woe. Without a doubt it may standen so. The answer of this leave I to divines, but well I wot that in this world great pine is. Alas, I see a serpent or a thief, that many a true man hath done mischief. Go at his lodge, and where him list may turn, but I must be in prison through Saturn, and eke through Juno, jealous, and eke Wood, that hath well nigh destroyed all the blood of Thebes with his waste walles wide, and Venus slayeth me on that other side. For jealousy and fear of him are sight. Now will I stent of Palamon alight, and let him in his prison stille dwell. And of our seat forth I will you tell. The summer passeth, and the night is long. Increase double wise the pain is strong, both of the lover and the prisoner. I note which hath the wofuller mister. For shortly for to say, this Palamon perpetually is damned to prison, in chains and in fetters to be dead, and Arcite is exiled on his head for evermore as out of that country, nor nevermore he shall his lady see. You lovers, ask I now this question: who lieth the worse, Arcite or Palamon? The one may see his lady day by day, but in prison he dwelle must alway. The other, where him list, may ride or go, but see his lady shall he never mo'. Now deem all as you list, ye that can, for I will tell you forth as I began. When that Arcite to Thebes comen was, full oft a day he swelt and said, Alas, for see this lady he shall know never mo'. And shortly to concluden all his woe, so much sorrow had never creature that is or shall be while the world may dure. His sleep, his meat, his drink is him byraft, that lean he wecks and dry as any shaft. His eyen hollow, grisly to behold, his hue sallow and pale as ashes cold. And solitary he was, ever alone, and wailing all the night, making his moan. And if he heard a song or instrument, then would he weepen, he might not be stent. So feeble were his spirits, and so low, and changed so, that no man coulde know his speech, neither his voice, though men it heard. And in his gear for all the world he fared not only like the lover's malady of Eros, but rather like many, engendered of humours melancholic, before his head in his cell fantastic. And shortly turned was all upside down, both habit and eke disposition of him, This woeful lover Dan Arcite. Why should I all day of his woe indite? When he endured had a year or two This cruel torment, and this pain and woe, At Thebes in his country, as I said, Upon a night in sleep as he him laid, Him thought how that the winged god Mercury Before him stood, and bade him to be merry. His sleepy yard in hand he bare upright, A hat he wore upon his haires bright. Arrayed was this god as he took keep, And he was when that August took his sleep, And said him thus: "To Athens shalt thou wend, There is thee shapen of thy woe an end." And with that word Arcite woke and start. "Now truly how sore that ere me smart," quoth he, "to Athens right now will I fare, Nor for no dread of death shall I not spare To see my lady that I love and serve. In her presence I recke not to sterve." And with that word he caught a great mirror, And saw that changed was all his colour, And saw his visage all in other kind, And right anon it ran him ill his mind, That since his face was so disfigured Of malady the which he had endured, He might well, if that he bare him low, Live in Athens evermore unknow, And see his lady well nigh day by day. And right anon he changed his array, And clad him as a poor labourer, And all alone, save only a squire, That knew his privity and all his cas, Which was disguised poorly as he was, To Athens is he gone the nexte way, And to the court he went upon a day, And at that gate he proffered his service, To drudge and draw whatso men would devise. And shortly of this matter for to sayn, He fell in office with a chamberlain, The which that dwelling was with Emily. For he was wise, and coulde soon espy Of every servant which that served her. Well could he hew wood and water bear, For he was young and mighty for the nonce, And thereto he was strong and big of bones, To do that any wight can him devise. A year or two he was in this service, Page of the chamber of Emily the bright, And Philostrate he said that he hight. But half so well beloved a man as he, Ne was there never in court of his degree. He was so gentle of condition, That throughout all the court was his renown. They said that it were a charity That Theseus would enhance his degree, And put him in some worshipful service There, as he might his virtue exercise. And thus within a while his name sprung, Both of his deedes and of his good tongue, That Theseus hath taken him so near, That of his chamber he hath made him squire, And gave him gold to maintain his degree, And eke men brought him out of his country, From year to year full privily his rent. But honestly and slyly he it spent, That no man wonder'd how that he it had. And 3 year in this wise his life beled, And bare him so in peace and eke in war, That there was no man that Theseus had so dear. And in this bliss leave I now Arcite, And speak I will of Palamon a light. In darkness horrible and strong prison This 7 year hath sitten Palamon, Forpined* what for love and for distress, *tormented Who feeleth double sorrow and heaviness. But Palamon, that love distraineth so, That would out of his wits he went for woe, And eke thereto he is a prisonere Perpetual, not only for a year. Who could rhyme in English properly His martyrdom? forsooth it is not I. Therefore I pass as lightly as I may. It fell that in the 7th year, in May, the 3rde night, as audiobookes sayn, that all this story tellen more plain. Were it by aventure or destiny, as when a thing is shapen, it shall be, that soon after the midnight Palamon, by helping of a friend, brake his prison, and fled the city fast as he might go, for he had given drink his jailor so of a clary made of a certain wine, with narcotes and opiae of Thebes fine, that all the night, though that men would him shake, the jailor slept, he might not wake. And thus he fled as fast as ever he may. The night was short, and fast by the day, that needes cast he must himself to hide, and to a grove fast there beside, with dreadful foot then stalked Palamon. For shortly this was his opinion, that in the grove he would him hide all day, and in the night then would he take his way to Thebes ward, his friendes for to pray on Theseus to help him to warray, and shortly either he would lose his life, or winnen Emily unto his wife. This is the effect and his intention plain. Now I will turn to Arcite again, that little wist how nigh was his care, till that fortune had brought him in the snare. The busy lark, the messenger of day, saluteth in her song the morning gray. And fiery Phoebus riseth up so bright, that all the Orient laugheth at the sight, and with his streames drieth in the greaves the silver drops hanging on the leaves. And Arcite, that is in the court royal, with Theseus his squire principal, is risen, and looketh on the merry day, and for to do his observance to May, remembering the point of his desire, he on his courser starting as the fire, is ridden to the fields him to play out of the court, were it a mile or tway, and to the grove of which I have you told, by aventure his way began to hold, to make him a garland of the greaves, were it of woodbine or of hawthorn leaves. And loud he sang against the sun so sheen, "O May, with all thy flowers and thy green, right welcome be thou, fair fresh May. I hope that I some green here getten may." And from his courser with a lusty heart into the grove full hastily he start, and in a path he roamed up and down. There as by aventure this Palamon was in a bush, that no man might him see, for sore afeard of his death was he. Nothing ne he knew that it was Arcite. God wot he would have trowed it full light. But sooth is said, gone since full many years, the field hath eyen, and the wood hath ears. It is a full fair a man to bear him even, for all day meeten men at unset steven. Full little wot Arcite of his fellaw, that was so nigh to hearken of his saw. For in the bush he sitteth now full still, when that Arcite had roamed all his fill, and sungen all the roundel lustily, as do those lovers in their quainte gears, now in the crop, and now down in the breres, now up, now down, as bucket in a well. Right as the Friday soothly for to tell, now shineth it, and now it raineth fast. Right so can Geary Venus overcast the heartes of her folks, right as her day is gearful, right so changeth she array. Seldom is Friday all the week like. When Arcite hadde sung, he gan to sike, and sat him down withouten any more. "Alas," quoth he, "the day that I was bore! How long, Juno, through thy cruelty, wilt thou warrayen Thebes the city? Alas, it brought is to confusion the blood royal of Cadm and Amphion, of Cadmus, which that was the firste man that Thebes built, or the first town began, and of the city first was crowned king. Of his lineage am I, and his offspring, by very line, as of the stock royal. And now I am so caitiff and so thrall, that he that is my mortal enemy, I serve him as his squire poorly. And yet doth Juno me well more shame, for I dare not beknow mine owen name. But there, as I was wont to hight Arcite, now hight I Philostrate, not worth a mite. Alas, thou fell Mars, and alas, Juno, thus hath your ire our lineage all fordo, save only me and wretched Palamon, that Theseus martyreth in prison. And over all this, to slay me utterly, Love hath his fiery dart so burningly is sticked through my true careful heart, that shapen was my death erst than my shart. Ye slay me with your eyes, Emily. Ye be the cause wherefore that I die. Of all the remnant of mine other care, ne set I not the mountains of a tear, so that I could do aught to your pleasance. And with that word he fell down in a trance a long time. And afterward upstart this Palamon, that thought through his heart he felt a cold sword suddenly to glide. For ire he quoke, no longer would he hide. And when that he had heard Arcite's tale, as he were wood, with face dead and pale, he start him up out of the bushes thick, and said, "False Arcite, false traitor wick! Now art thou hent that lov'st my lady so, for whom that I have all this pain and woe, and art my blood, and to my counsel sworn, as I full oft have told thee herebeforn. And hast bejaped here Duke Theseus, and falsely changed hast thy name thus. I will be dead, or elles thou shalt die. Thou shalt not love my lady Emily. For I will love her only, and no more. For I am Palamon, thy mortal foe. And though I have no weapon in this place, but out of prison am astart by grace, I dread not that either thou shalt die, or else thou shalt not loven Emily. Choose which thou wilt, for thou shalt not astart. This Arcite then, with full dispiteous heart, when he him knew and had his tale heard, as fierce as lion pulled out a sword, and said thus: "By God that sitteth above, ne'er it that thou art sick and wood for love, and eke that thou no weapon hast in this place, thou shouldst never out of this grove pace, that thou ne shouldst dien of mine hand. For I defy the surety and the band which that thou sayest I have made to thee. What, very fool, think well that love is free? And I will love her maugre than all thy might. But for thou art a worthy gentle knight, and wilnest to darraign her by battle, have here my troth. Tomorrow I will not fail, without weeting of any other wight, that here I will be founden as a knight, and bring harness right enough for thee, and choose the best, and leave the worst for me. And meat and drink this night will I bring enough for thee, and clothes for thy bedding. And if so be that thou my lady win, and slay me in this wood that I am in, Thou mayst well have thy lady as for me." This Palamon answered, "I grant it thee." And thus they be departed till the morrow, when each of them hath laid his faith to borrow. O Cupid, out of alle charity, O regne that wilt no fellow have with thee, full sooth is said, that love nor lordship will not his thanks have any fellowship. Well finden that Arcite and Palamon. Arcite is rid anon unto the town, and on the morrow, ere it were daylight, full privily 2 harness hath he dight, both sufficient and meet to darraign, and battle in the field betwixt them twain. And on his horse alone as he was born, he carrieth all this harness him beforn, and in the grove, at time and place y set, this Arcite and this Palamon be met. Then change gan the colour of their face, right as the hunter in the regne of Thrace, that standeth at a gap with a spear, when hunted is the lion or the bear, and heareth him come rushing in the greaves, and breaketh both the boughs and the leaves, thinketh, "Here comes my mortal enemy, without fail he must be dead or I, for either I must slay him at the gap, or he must slay me, if that me mishap." So fared they, in changing of their hue, as far as either of them other knew. There was no good day, and no saluting, but straight, withoute wordes rehearsing, ever each of them holp to arm the other, as friendly as he were his owen brother. And after that, with sharpe speares strong, they foined each at other wonder long. Thou mightest ween that this Palamon in fighting were as a wood lion, and as a cruel tiger was Arcite. As wild boars gan they together smite, that froth as white as foam, for ire wood, up to the ankle fought they in their blood. And in this wise I let them fighting dwell, and forth I will of Theseus you tell. The destiny, minister general, that executeth in the world o'er all the purveyance that God hath seen beforn, so strong it is, that though the world had sworn the contrary of a thing, by yea or nay, yet sometime it shall fallen on a day, that falleth not eft in 1,000 year. For certainly our appetites here, be it of war, or peace, or hate, or love, all is this ruled by the sight above. This mean I now by mighty Theseus, that for to hunten is so desirous, and namely the greate hart in May, that in his bed there dawneth him no day that he is not clad and ready for to ride, with hunt and horn and hounds by his side. For in his hunting hath he such delight, that it is all his joy and appetite to be himself the great harte's bane, for after Mars he serveth now Diane. Clear was the day, as I have told ere this, and Theseus with alle joy and bliss, and with his Hippolyta the faire queen, and Emily, y-clothed all in green, on hunting be they ridden royally, and to the grove that stood there fast by, in which there was a hart, as men him told, Duke Theseus the straight way doth hold, and to the land he rideth him full right. There was the hart y wont to have his flight, and over a brook, and so forth on his way. This Duke will have a course at him or tway, with houndes, such as him lust to command. And when this Duke was come to the land, under the sun he looked, and anon he was ware of Arcite and Palamon, that fought breme, as it were bullis too. The bright swords went to and fro so hideously, that with the least stroke it seemed that it would fell an oak. But what they were, nothing yet he wot. This Duke his courser with his spurres smote, and at a start he was betwixt them two, and pulled out a sword and cried, "Ho! no more, on pain of losing your head. By mighty Mars, he shall anon be dead that smiteth any stroke that I may see. But tell to me what mystery men ye be, that be so hardy for to fighte here, without judge or other officer, as though it were in lists royally." This Palamon answered hastily and said, "Sir, what needeth wordes mo'? We have the death deserved both the two. Two woeful wretches be we, and caitives, that be accumbered of our own lives. And as thou art a rightful lord and judge, so give us neither mercy nor refuge, and slay me first for sainte charity, but slay my fellow eke as well as me. Or slay him first, for, though thou know it light, this is thy mortal foe. This is Arcite, that from thy land is banished on his head, for which he hath deserved to be dead. For this is he that came unto thy gate, and said that he hight Philostrate. Thus hath he japed thee full many year, and thou hast made of him thy chief esquire. And this is he that loveth Emily. For since the day is come that I shall die, I make plainly my confession, that I am thilke woeful Palamon, that hath thy prison broken wickedly. I am thy mortal foe, and it am I that so hot loveth Emily the bright, that I would die here present in her sight. Therefore I ask death and my jewise, and slay my fellow eke in the same wise, for both we have deserved to be slain." This worthy Duke answered anon again, and said, "This is a short conclusion. To your own mouth, by your own confession, hath damned you, and I will it record. It needeth not to pain you with the cord. Ye shall be dead, by mighty Mars the Red." The queen anon, for very womanhead, began to weep, and so did Emily, and all the ladies in the company. Great pity was it, as it thought them all, that ever such a chance should befall. For gentle men they were, of great estate, and nothing but for love was this debate. They saw their bloody woundes wide and sore, and cried all at once, both less and more, "Have mercy, Lord, upon us women all." And on their bare knees adown they fall, and would have kissed his feet there as he stood, till at the last aslaked was his mood. For pity runneth soon in the gentle heart. And though at first for ire he quoke and start, he hath considered shortly in a clause the trespass of them both, and eke the cause. And although that his ire their guilt accused, yet in his reason he hath them both excused. As thus: he thought well that every man will help himself in love if that he can, and eke deliver himself out of prison of women, for they wepten ever in one. And eke his hearte had compassion, and in his gentle heart he thought anon, and soft unto himself he said, "Fie upon a lord that will have no mercy, but be a lion both in word and deed, to them that be in repentance and dread, as well as to a proud dispiteous man, that will maintain what he first began. That lord hath little of discretion, that in such case can no division, but weigheth pride and humbleness after one. And shortly, when his ire is thus agone, he gan to look on them with eyen light, and spake these sames wordes all on height: The God of love, ah benedicite, how mighty and how great a lord is he! Against his might there gain none obstacles. He may be called a god for his miracles, for he can maken at his owen guise of every heart as that him list devise. Lo here this Arcite and this Palamon, that quietly were out of my prison, and might have lived in Thebes royally, and weet I am their mortal enemy, and that their death lieth in my might also, and yet hath love more their eyen two brought them hither both for to die. Now look ye, is this not an high folly? Who may not be a fool if but he love? Behold, for Godde's sake that sits above, see how they bleed. Be they not well arrayed? Thus hath their lord, the God of love, them paid their wages and their fees for their service. And yet they ween for to be full wise that serve love, for aught that may befall. But this is yet the beste game of all, that she for whom they have this jealousy can them therefore as muchel thank as me. She wot no more of all this hot fare, by God, than what a cuckoo or an hare. But all must be assayed, hot or cold. A man must be a fool, or young or old. I wot it by myself full yore agone, for in my time a servant was I one, and therefore since I know of love's pain, and wot how sore it can a man distrain, and he that oft hath been caught in his last, I you forgive wholly this trespass, at request of the queen that kneeleth here, and eke of Emily my sister dear. And ye shall both anon unto me swear, that never more ye shall my country dare, nor make war upon me night or day, but be my friends in all that ye may. I you forgive this trespass every deal. And they him sware his asking fair and well, and him of lordship and of mercy prayed, and he them granted grace, and thus he said: To speak of royal lineage and richess, though that she were a queen or a princess, each of you both is worthy doubteless to wed when time is. But natheless I speak as for my sister Emily, for whom ye have this strife and jealousy. Ye wot yourselves she may not wed the two at once, although ye fight for evermore. But one of you, albe him loth or lief, he must go pipe into an ivy leaf. This is to say, she may not have you both, albe ye never so jealous nor so wroth. And therefore I you put in this degree, that each of you shall have his destiny as him is shape. And hearken in what wise. Lo here your end of that I shall devise. My will is this, for plain conclusion, withouten any replication. If that you liketh, take it for the best, that evereach of you shall go where him lest, freely, without ransom or danger. And this day 50 weekes far ne near, evereach of you shall bring 100 knights, armed for lists up at all rights, all ready to darraign her by battle. And this behete I you without fail, upon my troth, and as I am a knight. that whether of you both that hath might, that is to say, that whether he or thou may with his 100, as I spake of now, slay his contrary, or out of lists drive, him shall I give Emily to wive. To whom that fortune gives so fair a grace, the lists shall I make here in this place, and God so wisely on my soul rule, as I shall even judge be and true. Yet shall none other end with me maken, than one of you shall be dead or taken. And if you think it this as well is said, say your advice, and hold yourselves apaid. This is your end and your conclusion. Who looketh lightly now but Palamon? Who springeth up for joy but Arcite? Who could it tell, or who could it indite, the joy that is maked in the place when Theseus hath done so fair a grace? But down on knees went every manner wight, and thanked him with all their hearte's might, and namely these Thebans oft sithe. And thus with good hope and with heart blithe they take their leave, and homeward gan they ride to Thebesward with his old walles wide. This ends the Knight's Tale Part 1. The story concludes on the next file. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Ted DeLorme in Fort Mill, South Carolina, during June 2006. The Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. Edited by D. Laing Purves. This reading is based on the book The Canterbury Tales and Other Poems. The original text contains poems by Chaucer and a lot of notes and explanations by the editor. To view these, please click on the Gutenberg e-text link on the LibriVox catalog page of the Canterbury Tales. And now we continue with The Knight's Tale, Part 2. I trow men would deem it negligence if I forgot to tell the dispense of Theseus, that went so busily to maken up the lists royally, that such a noble theater as it was, I dare well say in all this world there n'as. The circuit a mile was about, walled of stone, and ditched all without. Round was the shape in manner of compass, full of degrees, the height of 60 pass, that when a man was set on 1 degree, he letted not his fellow for to see. Eastward there stood a gate of marble white, westward right such another opposite. And shortly to conclude, such a place was never on earth made in so little space, for in the land there was no craftsman that geometry or archimetrica can, nor portrayer, nor carver of images, that Theseus ne gave him meat and wages, the theater to make and to devise. And for to do his rite and sacrifice, he eastward hath upon the gate above, in worship of Venus, goddess of love, done make an altar and an oratory. And westward in the mind and in memory of Mars, he maked hath right such another, that cost largely of gold a father. And northward in a turret on the wall of alabaster white and red coral, an oratory reach for to see, in worship of Diane of chastity, hath Theseus done work in noble wise. But yet had I forgotten to devise the noble carving and the portraitures, the shape, the countenance of the figures that weren in their oratories 3. First, in the temple of Venus mayst thou see, wrought on the wall, full piteous to behold, the broken sleepes and the seekes cold, the sacred tears and the waymentings, the fiery strokes of the desirings that love's servants in this life endure, the oaths that their covenants assure, pleasance and hope, desire, foolhardiness, beauty and youth, and bawdry and riches, charms and sorcery, leasings and flattery, dispense, business, and jealousy, that wore of yellow goldus a garland, and had a cuckoo sitting on her hand, feasts, instruments, and carols, and dances, lust and array, and all the circumstances of love, which I reckoned and reckon shall, in order, were painted on the wall, and more than I can make of mention. For soothly all the mount of Cithaeron, where Venus hath her principal dwelling, was showed on the wall in portraying, with all the garden and the lustiness, nor was forgot the porter idleness, nor Narcissus the fair of yore agone, nor yet the folly of King Solomon, nor yet the great strength of Hercules, the enchantments of Medea and Circes, nor of Turnus the hardy fierce courage, the rich Croesus, caitiff in servage. Thus may ye see that wisdom nor riches, beauty nor sleight, nor strength nor hardiness, ne may with Venus hold champarte, for as her list the world may she guide. Lo, all these folks so caught were in her lass, till they for woe full often said, alas! Suffice these ensamples one or two, although I could reckon 1,000 mo'. The statue of Venus, glorious to see, was naked floating in the large sea, and from the navel down all covered was with waves green and bright as any glass. A citole in her right hand had she, and on her head, full seemly for to see, a rose garland fresh and well smelling. Above her head, her doves flickering, before her stood her son Cupido. Upon his shoulders winges had he two, and blind he was, as it is often seen. A bow he bare, and arrows bright and keen. Why should I not as well eke tell you all the portraiture that was upon the wall, within the temple of mighty Mars the Red? All painted was the wall in length and bread, like to the estrus of the grisly place that hight the great temple of Mars in Thrace, in thilke gold and frosty region. There as Mars had his sovran mansion, in which there dwelled neither man nor beast, with knotty gnarly barren trees old, of stubbs sharp and hideous to behold, in which there ran a rumble and a sough, as though a storm should burst in every bough. And downward from an hill under a bent there stood the temple of Mars omnipotent, wrought all of burnished steel, of which the entry was long and strait and ghastly for to see. And thereout came a rage and such a vice, that it made all the gates for to rise. The northern light in at the door shone, for window on the wall was there none, through which men mighten any light discern. The doors were all of adamant turn, y clenched over thwart and end along, with iron tough, and for to make it strong, every pillar the temple to sustain was tonne great of iron bright and sheen. There saw I first the dark imagining of felony, and all the compassing, the cruel ire as red as any gleed, the pick purse and eke the pallid dread, the smiler with the knife under the cloak, the shepen burning with the blackest smoke, the treason of the murdering in the bed, the open war with woundes all bebled, contake with bloody knife and sharp menace. All full of chirking was that sorry place. The slayer of himself eke there saw I there. His heart blood had bathed all his hair. The nail driven in the shod at night. The cold death, with mouth gaping upright. Amidst of the temple sat mischance, with discomfort and sorry countenance. Eke saw I woodness, laughing in his rage, armed complaint, outhaste, and fierce outrage. The carrain in the bush with throat cove, 1,000 slain, and not of qualm y stove. The tyrant with the prey by force yreft, the town destroyed, that there was nothing left. Yet saw I burnt the ships upstairs, the hunter strangled with the wild bears, the sow freighting the child right in the cradle, the cook scalded for all his long ladle. Nor was forgot by the infortune of mart the carter overridden with his cart. Under the wheel full low he lay adown. There were also of Mars' division the armourer, the bowyer, and the smith, that forgeth sharp swordes on his stith. And all above, depainted in a tower, saw I Conquest sitting in great honour, with thilke sharp sword over his head, hanging by a subtle y-twined thread. Painted the slaughter was of Julius, of cruel Nero, and Antonius. Although at that time they were yet unborn, yet was their death depainted there beforn. By menacing of Mars right by figure, so was it shewed in that portraiture, as is depainted in the stars above, who shall be slain, or elles dead for love. Sufficeth one ensample in stories old. I may not reckon them all, though I would. The statue of Mars upon a cart stood, armed, and looked grim as he were wood. And over his head there shone 2 figures of starres, that be cleped in scriptures. That one Puella, that other Rubius. This god of arms was arrayed thus. A wolf there stood before him at his feet, with eyen red, and of a man he eat. With subtle pencil painted was this story, in redoubting of Mars and of his glory. Now to the temple of Diane the chaste. As shortly as I can I will me haste, to telle you all the description depainted be the walles up and down, of hunting and of shamefast chastity. There saw I how woeful Callistope, when that Diana grieved was with her, was turned from a woman to a bear, and after was she made the lodestar. Thus was it painted, I can say no far. Her son is eke a star, as men may see. There saw I Dane turned into a tree. I meane not the goddess Diane, but Peneus' daughter, which that hight Dane. There saw I Actaeon and heart y-maked, for vengeance that he saw Diane all naked. I saw how that his houndes have him caught, and fretten him, for that they knew him not. Yet painted was a little farthermore how Atalanta hunted the wild boar, and Meleager, and many other more, for which Diana wrought them care and woe. There saw I many another wondrous story, the which me list not drawen to memory. This goddess on an hart full high was set, with small houndes all about her feet, and underneath her feet she had a moon, waxing it was, and should wane soon. In gaudy green her statue clothed was, with bow in hand and arrows in a case. Her eyen cast she full low adown, where Pluto hath his dark region. A woman travailing was her beforn, but for her child so long was unborn. Full piteously Lucina gan she call, and said, "Help, for thou mayst best of all." Well could he paint lifelike that it wrought, with many a florin he the hues had bought. Now be these listes made, and Theseus, that at his great cost arrayed thus the temples and the theatre every deal, when it was done, him liked wonder well. But stint I will of Theseus a light, and speak of Palamon and of Arcite. The day approacheth of their returning, that evereach 100 knights should bring the battle to darraign, as I you told, and to Athens their covenant to hold. Hath evereach of them brought 100 knights, well armed for the war at all rights. And sickerly there trowed many a man, that never sithen that the world began, for to speaken of knighthood of their hand, as far as God hath maked sea and land, was of so few, so noble a company. For every wight that loved chivalry, and would his thanks have a passant name, had prayed that he might be of that game. And well was him that thereto chosen was, for if there fell tomorrow such a case, ye know well that every lusty knight that loveth paramour, and hath his might, were it in Engleland or elleswhere, they would their thankes willen to be there, to fight for a lady benecite. It were a lusty sight for to see. And right so fared they with Palamon. With him there went knights many one. Some will be armed in an habergeon, and in a breastplate, and in a gipon. Some will have a pair of plates large, and some will have a prose shield or targe. Some will be armed on their legges well. Some have an axe, and some a mace of steel. There is no new guise, but it was old. Armed they weren, as I have you told, evereach after his opinion. There mayst thou see coming with Palamon. Lycurgus himself, the great king of Thrace, black was his beard and manly was his face. The circles of his eyen in his head, they glowed betwixt yellow and red. Like a griffin looked he about, with kempte hair on his browe stout. His limbs were great, his brawns were hard and strong, his shoulders broad, his armes round and long. And as the guise was in his country, full high upon a car of gold he stood, with 4 white bulles in the trace, instead of coat armor on his harness, with yellow nails, and bright as any gold. He had a bear's skin, coal black for old. His long hair was akimpt behind his back, as any raven's feather it shone for black. A wreath of gold arm great of huge weight upon his head sat, full of stones bright, of fine rubies and clear diamonds. About his car there went white alance, 20 and more, as great as any steer, to hunt the lion or the wilde bear, and followed him with muzzle fast abound, collars of gold and torrets filed around. 100 lords had he in his rout, armed full well with hearte stern and stout. With our sight in stories as men find, the great Emetrius, the king of Inde, upon a steed bay trapped in steel, covered with cloth of gold diapered well, came riding like the god of arms, Mars. His coat armor was a cloth of tars, couched with pearls white and round and great. His saddle was of burnished gold new beat, a mantlet on his shoulders hanging, breadful of rubies red as fires sparkling. His crispe hair like ringes was a run, and that was yellow, glittering as the sun. His nose was high, his eyen bright citrine. His lips were round, his colour was sanguine. A few of frankness in his face ysprent, betwixt yellow and black some deal amint. And as a lion he his looking cast, of 25 year his age I cast. His beard was well begonnen for to spring, his voice was as a trumpet thundering. Upon his head he wore of laurel green a garland fresh and lusty to be seen. Upon his hand he bare, for his delight, an eagle tame as any lily white. 100 lords had he with him there, all armed, save their heads in all their gear, full richly in all manner things. For trust ye well that earles, dukes, and kings were gathered in this noble company, for love and for increase of chivalry. About this king there ran on every part full many a tame lion and leopard. And in this wise these lordes all and some be on the Sunday to the city come, about a prime, and in the town alight. This Theseus, this duke, this worthy knight, when he had brought them into his city, and inned them, evereach at his degree, he feasteth them, and doth so great labour to ease in them, and do them all honour, that yet men ween that no manne's wit of none estate could amenden it. The minstrelsy, the service at the feast, the great gifts to the most and least, the rich array of Theseus' palace, nor who say to first or last upon the dais, what ladies fairest be or best dancing, or which of them can carol best or sing, or who most feelingly speaketh of love, what hawk is sitten on the perch above, what hound is liggen on the floor adown. Of all this now I make no mention, but of the fact that thinketh me the best. Now comes the point, and hearken if you lest. The Sunday night, ere day began to spring, when Palamon the larke hearde sing, although it were not day by houres two, yet sang the lark, and Palamon right tho, with holy heart and with a high courage, arose to wenden on his pilgrimage unto the blissful Cythera benign, I mean Venus honourable and dine. And in her hour he walketh forth apace unto the lists where her temple was, and down he kneeleth, and with humble cheer and hearte sore he said, as ye shall hear: Fairest of fair, O lady mine Venus, daughter to Jove and spouse of Vulcanus, thou gladder of the mount of Cithaeron, for thilke love thou haddest to adon, have pity on my bitter teare's smart, and take mine humble prayer to thine heart. Alas, I have no language to tell the effect nor the torment of mine hell. Mine heart may mine harmes not betray. I am so confused that I cannot say. But mercy, Lady bright, that knowest well my thought, and seest what harm that I feel, consider all this, and rue upon my sore, as wisely as I shall for evermore enforce my might, thy true servant to be, and hold a war alway with chastity. That make I mine avow, so ye me help. I keep not of arms for to yelp, nor ask I not tomorrow to have victory, nor renown in this case, nor vain glory of prize of arms blowing up and down, but I would have fully possession of Emily, and die in her service. Find thou the manner how and in what wise. I reckon not but it may better be to have victory of them or they of me, so that I have my lady in mine arms. For though so be that Mars is god of arms, your virtue is so great in heaven above, that if you list, I shall well have my love. Thy temple will I worship evermore, and on thine altar, where I ride or go, I will do sacrifice and fires bait. And if ye will not so, my lady sweet, then I pray you, tomorrow with a spear that Arcite me through the heart to bear. Then reck I not when I have lost my life, though that Arcite to win her to his wife. This is the effect and the end of my prayer. Give me my love, thou blissful lady dear. When the orison was done of Palamon, his sacrifice he did, and that anon, full piteously with all the circumstances. All tell I not as now his observances, but at the last the statue of Venus shook, and made a sign, whereby that he took that his prayer accepted was that day. For though the sign shewed a delay, yet wist he well that granted was his boon, and with glad heart he went him home full soon. The third hour unequal that Palamon began to Venus' temple for to gon, uprose the sun, and uprose Emily, and to the temple of Diane gan she. Her maidens, that she thither with her lad, the incense, the clothes, and remnant all, that to the sacrifice belonge shall. The hornes full of mead, as was the guise, there lacked naught to do her sacrifice. Smoking the temple full of clothes fair, this Emily with heart debonair, her body washed with water of a well. But how she did her rite I dare not tell, but it be any thing in general, and yet it were a game to hearen all. To him that meaneth well it were no charge, but it is good a man to be at large. Her bright hair combed was, untressed all, a coronet of green oak cereal. Upon her head was set full fair and meet. 2 fires on the altar gan she beat, and did her thinges as men may behold in stace of Thebes and these bookes old. When kindled was the fire with piteous cheer, unto Diane she spake, as ye may hear. O chaste goddess of the woodes green, to whom both heaven and earth and sea is seen, queen of the realm of Pluto dark and low, goddess of maidens that mine heart has know full many a year, and wost what I desire, to keep me from the vengeance of thine ire, that Actaeon aborte cruelly. Chaste goddess, well wottest thou that I desire to be a maiden all my life, nor never will I be no love nor wife. I am, thou wost, yet of thy company a maid, and love hunting and venery, and for to walken in the woodes wild, and not to be a wife and be with child. Nought will I know the company of man. Now help me, lady, since ye may and can, for those three formes that thou hast in thee, and Palamon that hath such love to me, and eke Arcite that loveth me so sore. This grace I pray thee withoute more, as sende love and peace betwixt them two, and from me turn away their heartes so, that all their hote love and their desire, and all their busy torment and their fire be quaint, or turned into another place. And if so be thou wilt do me no grace, or if my destiny be shapen so, that I shall needes have one of them two, so send me him that most desireth me. Behold, goddess of clean chastity, the bitter tears that on my cheekes fall. Since thou art maid and keeper of us all, my maidenhead thou keep and well conserve, and while I live, a maid I will thee serve. The fires burn upon the altar clear, while Emily was thus in her prayer. But suddenly she saw a sight quaint, for right anon one of the fires gained, and quicked again, and after that anon that other fire was quaint, and all agone, and as it quaint, it made a whistling, as doth a brand wet in its burning, and at the brandes end outran anon, as it were, bloody drops many one. For which so sore aghast was Emily, that she was well nigh mad, and gan to cry, for she ne wist what it signified, but only for fear thus she cried, and wept that it was pity for to hear. And therewithal Diana gan appear, with bow in hand, right as an hunteress, and said, "Daughter, stint thine heaviness. Among the goddes high it is affirmed, and by eternal word writ and confirmed, thou shalt be wedded unto one of tho that have for thee so muche care and woe, but unto which of them I may not tell. Farewell, for here I may no longer dwell. The fires which that on mine altar burn shall thee declaren ere that thou go hene, thine aventure of love, as in this case." And with that word the arrows in the case of the goddess did clatter fast and ring, and forth she went and made a vanishing. For which this Emily astonished was, and said, "What amounteth this? Alas! I put me under thy protection, Diane, and in thy disposition." And home she went anon the nexte way. This is the effect, there is no more to say. The next hour of Mars following this, Arcite to the temple walked is of fierce Mars, to do his sacrifice with all the rites of his pagan guise. With piteous heart and high devotion, right thus to Mars he said his orison: "O stronge God, that in the regnes old of Thrace honored art, and lord y-hold, and hast in every regne and every land of armes all the bridle in thine hand, and them fortunest as thee list devise, accept of me my piteous sacrifice. If so be that my youth may deserve, and that my might be worthy for to serve thy godhead, that I may be one of thine, Then pray I thee to rue upon my pine, for thilke pain and thilke hotte fire, in which thou whilom burnest for desire, when that thou usedest the beauty of fair young Venus, fresh and free, and haddest her in armes at thy will, and though thee ones on a time misfill, when Vulcanus had caught thee in his lass, and found thee lagging by his wife, alas! For thilke sorrow that was in thine heart have ruth as well upon my paines smart. I am young and uncunning, as thou knowest, and as I trow with love offended most that e'er was any living creature. For she that doth me all this woe endure ne recketh ne'er whether I sink or fleet. And well I wot, ere she me mercy heat, I must with strength win her in the place. And well I wot, without help or grace of thee, ne may my strength not avail. Then help me, Lord, to-morrow in my battail, for thilke fire that whilom burned thee, as well as this fire that now burneth me. And do that I to-morrow may have victory. Mine be the travail, all thine be the glory. Thy sovereign temple will I most honor of any place, and always most labor in thy pleasance, and in thy craftes strong. And in thy temple I will my banner hong, and all the armes of my company, and evermore, until the day I die, eternal fire I will before thee find, and eke to this my vow I will me bind. My beard, my hair that hangeth long adown, that never yet hath felt offension of razor nor of shears, I will thee give, and be thy true servant while I live. Now, Lord, have ruth upon my sorrows sore, give me the victory, I ask no more. The prayer stent of Arcite the strong, the ringes on the temple door that hung, and eke the doores clattered full fast, of which Arcita somewhat was aghast. The fires burned upon the altar bright, that it gan all the temple for to light. A sweete smell anon the ground upgaf, and Arcite anon his hand uphaf, and more incense into the fire he cast, with other rites more. And at the last the statue of Mars began his hauberk ring, and with that sound he heard a murmuring full low and dim, that said thus: Victory, for which he gave to Mars honor and glory. And thus with joy and hope well to fare, Arcite anon unto his inn doth fare, as fain as fowl is of the brighte sun. And right anon such strife there is begun, for thilke granting in the heav'n above, betwixt Venus the goddess of love, and Mars the stern god omnipotent, that Jupiter was busy it to stent. Till that the pale Saturnus the cold, that knew so many of adventures old, found in his old experience such an art, that he full soon hath pleased every part. And sooth is said, eld hath great advantage. In eld is both wisdom and usage. Men may the old outrun, but not outrede. Saturn anon to stint the strife and dread, albeit that it is against his kind, of all this strife gan a remedy find. My deare daughter Venus, quoth Saturn, my course that hath so wide for to turn hath more power than wot any man. Mine is the drowning in the sea so wan, mine is the prison in the darke cote, mine the strangling and hanging by the throat, the murmur and the churlish rebelling, the groaning and the privy poisoning. I do vengeance and plain correction. I dwell in the sign of the lion. Mine is the ruin of the high halls, the falling of the towers and the walls upon the miner or the carpenter. I slew Samson in shaking the pillar. Mine also be the maladies cold, the darke treasons, and the castes old. My looking is the father of pestilence. Now weep no more. I shall do diligence that Palamon, that is thine owen knight, shall have his lady as thou hast him hight. Though Mars shall help his knight, yet natheless betwixt you there must sometime be peace. All be ye not of one complexion, that each day causeth such division. I am thine ale, ready at thy will. Weep now no more, I shall thy lust fulfill. Now will I stenten of the gods above, of Mars and of Venus, goddess of love, and tell you as plainly as I can the great effect for which that I began. Great was the feast in Athens thilke day, and eke the lusty season of that May made every wight to be in such pleasance, that all that Monday jousten they and dance, and spenden it in Venus' high service. But by the cause that they should rise early a morrow for to see that fight, unto their rest went they that night. And on the morrow, when the day gan spring, of horse and harness, noise and clattering, there was in the hostelries all about. And to the palace rode there many a rout of lordes upon steeds and palfreys. There may thou see devising of harness, so uncouth and so rich, and wrought so well, of goldsmithry, of broding, and of steel. The shieldes bright, the testers and trappures, the gold-hewen helmets, hauberks, coat armures, lords in paraments on their courses, knights of retinue, and eke squires, nailing the spears and helmes buckling, gniding of shields with laners lacing. There as need is, they were nothing idle, the foamy steeds upon the golden bridle, gnawing, and fast the armourers also, with file and hammer picking to and fro. Yeomen on foot, and knaves a many one, with shorte staves thick as they may gon. Pipes, trumpets, neckeres, and clarions, that in the battle blow bloody sounds, the palace full of people up and down, there 3, there 10, holding their question, divining of these Theban knightes two. Some saiden thus, some said it shall he so, some helden with him with the black beard, some with the bald, some with the thick-haired. Some said he looked grim and would fight. He had a sparth of 20 pound of weight. Thus was the hall full of divining, long after that the sun gan up spring. The great Theseus, that of his sleep is waked with minstrelsy and noise that was maked, held yet the chamber of his palace rich, till that the Theban knightes both illich honoured were, and to the palace fete. Duke Theseus is at a window set, arrayed right as he were a god on a throne. The people presseth thitherward full soon, him for to see and do him reverence, and eke to hearken his hest and his sentence. An herald on a scaffold made an O, till the noise of the people was ado. And when he saw the people of noise all still, thus shewed he the Duke's mighty will. The Lord hath of his high discretion considered that it were destruction to gentle blood to fighten in the guise of mortal battle now in this emprise. Wherefore, to shape that they shall not die, he will his firste purpose modify. No man, therefore, on pain of loss or life, no manner shot, nor poleaxe, nor short knife, into the lists shall send, or thither bring. Nor short sword for to stick with point biting no man shall draw, nor bear it by his side, and no man shall unto his fellow ride, but one course, with a sharp y-grounden spear, foin if him list on foot himself to wear. And he that is at mischief shall be take and not slain, but be brought unto the stake, that shall be ordained on either side. Thither he shall by force and there abide. And if so fall the chieftain be take on either side, or elles slay his make, no longer then the tourneying shall last. God speed you, go forth and lay on fast. With longe sword and with mace fight your fill. Go now your way, this is the Lorde's will. The voice of the people touched the heaven, so loude cried they with merry steven. God save such a lord that is so good, he willeth no destruction of blood. Up go the trumpets and the melody, and to the listes rode the company, by ordinance throughout the city large, hanged with cloth of gold and not with sarge. Full like a lord this noble Duke gan ride, and these two Thebans upon either side. And after rode the queen and Emily, and after them another company of one and other after their degree. And thus they passed through that city, and to the listes came they by time. It was not of the day yet fully prime, when set was Theseus full rich and high, Hippolyta the queen, and Emily, and other ladies in their degrees about. Unto the seates presseth all the rout, and westward through the gates under mart. Arcite, and eke the 100 of his part, with banner red is entered right anon. And in the selve moment Palamon is under Venus eastward in the place, with banner white and hardy cheer and face. In all the world to seeken up and down, so even without variation, there were such companies never tway. For there was none so wise that coulde say that any had of other avantage, of worthiness, nor of estate, nor age. So even were they chosen for to guess, and in two ranges fair they them dress. When that their names read were every one, that in their number guile were there none. Then when the gates shut, and cried was loud, "Do now your devoir, young knightes proud." The heralds left their pricking up and down. Now ring the trumpet loud and clarion. There is no more to say, but east and west in go the speares sadly in the rest. In go the sharpe spurs into the side. There see me who can joust and who can ride. There shiver shaftes upon shieldes thick. He feeleth through the hearte spoon the prick. Up spring the spears 20 foot on height. Out go the swordes as the silver bright. The helmes they to hewen and to shred. Out burst the blood with sterne streames red. With mighty maces to the bone they to brest. He through the thickest of the throng gan threst. There stumbles steedes strong, and down go all. He rolleth under foot as doth a ball. He foineth on his foe with a truncheon, and he him hurleth with his horse adown. He through the body hurt is, and sith take Maugre's head, and brought unto the stake. As forward was, right there he must abide. Another lead is on that other side, and sometime doth them Theseus to rest, them to refresh, and drinken if them lest. Full oft a day have the Thebans two together met, and wrought each other woe. Unhorsed hath each other of them tway. There is no tiger in the vale of Gallifrey. When that her whelp is stole, when it is light, so cruel on the hunter as Arcite, for jealous heart upon this Palamon. Nor in Belle Marie there is no fell lion that hunted is, or for his hunger would, or for his prey desireth so the blood as Palamon to slay his foe Arcite. The jealous strokes upon their helmets abite, out runneth blood on both their sides red. Sometime an end there is of every deed, for ere the sun unto the rest went, the stronge King Emetrius gan hent this Palamon, as he fought with Arcite, and made his sword deep in his flesh to bite. And by the force of 20 is he take, unyielding, and is drawn unto the stake. And in the rescue of this Palamon the strong King Lycurgus is borne down, and King Emetrius, for all his strength, is borne out of his saddle a sworde's length. So hit him Palamon ere he were take, but all for naught, he was brought to the stake. His hardy heart might him helpe naught. He must abide when that he was caught by force, and eke by composition. Who sorroweth now but woeful Palamon, that must no more go again to fight? And when that Theseus had seen that sight, unto the folk that fought thus each one he cried, "Ho, no more, for it is done. I will be true judge and not party. Arcite of Thebes shall have Emily, that by his fortune hath her fairly won." Anon there is a noise of people gone for joy of this, so loud and high withal, it seemed that the listes should fall. What can now fair Venus do above? What saith she now? What doth this queen of love but weepeth so, for wanting of her will, till that her teares in the listes fill? She said, "I am ashamed doubteless." Saturnus said, "Daughter, hold thy peace. Mars hath his will, his knight hath all his boon, but by mine head thou shalt be eased soon. And the trumpeters with the loud minstrelsy, the heralds that full loude yell and cry, be in their joy for weal of Dan Arcite. But hearken me, and stent noise alight, for what a miracle there befell anon. This fierce Arcite hath off his helm ydone, and on a courser for to shew his face, he pricketh endelong the large place, looking upward upon this Emily. And she again him cast a friendly eye, for women as to speaken in commune, they follow all the favour of fortune. And was all his in cheer as his in heart. Out of the ground a fire infernal start, from Pluto sent, at request of Saturn, for which his horse for fear began to turn, and leap aside, and founder as he leap. And ere that Arcite may take any keep, he pight him on the pummel of his head, that in the place he lay as he were dead, his breast to bursten with his saddle bow. As black he lay as any coal or crow, so was the blood y run into his face. Anon he was y-borne out of the place, with hearte sore, to Theseus' palace. Then was he carven out of his harness, and in a bed brought full fair and blithe, for he was yet in memory and alive, and always crying after Emily. Duke Theseus, with all his company, is come home to Athens his city, with all a bliss and a great solemnity. Albeit that this aventure was fall, he would not discomfort them all. Then said eke that Arcite should not die, he should be healed of his malady. And of another thing they were as fain, that of them all was there no one slain. All were they sorely hurt, and namely one that with a spear was thirled his breastbone, to other woundes, and to broken arms. Some hadden salves, some hadden charms, and pharmacies of herbs and eke salve. They dranken, for they would their lives have, for which this noble Duke, as well he can, comforteth and honoureth every man, and made revel all the longe night unto the strange lordes, as was right. Nor there was holden no discomforting, but as at jousts or at a tourneying, forsoothly there was no discomfiture. For falling is not but an adventure, nor to be led by force unto a stake unyielding, and with 20 knights it take one person all alone withouten mo', and harried forth by armes, foot, and toe, and eke his steed driven forth with staves, with footmen, both yeomen, and eke knaves. It was arretted him no villainy, there may no man clepen it cowardy. For which anon Duke Theseus let cry, to stenten alle rancour and envy, the gree as well on one side as the other, and either side alike as other's brother, and gave them gifts after their degree, and held a feast fully dayes 3, and conveyed the kinges worthily out of his town a journey largely, and home went every man the right way. There was no more but farewell, have good day. Of this battle I will no more indite, but speak of Palamon and of Arcite. Swelleth the breast of Arcite, and the sore increaseth at his hearte more and more. The clotted blood for any leechcraft corrupteth, and is in his boke laft, that neither veine blood nor ventus sing, nor drink of herbis may be his helping. The virtue expulsive or animal, from thilke virtue called natural, nor may the venom void nor expel. The pipes of his lungs began to swell, and every lacert in his breast adown is shent with venom and corruption. Him gaineth neither, for to get his life, vomit upward nor downward laxative. All is to burst in thilke region. Nature hath now no domination, and certainly where nature will not wirch, farewell physic, go bear the man to church. This all and some is, Arcite must die, for which he sendeth after Emily. And Palamon, that was his cousin dear, then said he thus, as ye shall after hear: Nought may the woeful spirit in mine heart declare one point of all my sorrows smart to you, my lady that I love the most, but I bequeath the service of my ghost to you aboven every creature, since that my life ne may no longer dure. Alas the woe, alas the paines strong, that I for you have suffered, and so long. Alas the death, alas mine Emily, alas departing of our company. Alas mine hearte's queen, alas my wife, mine hearte's lady, ender of my life. What is this world? What aske men to have? Now with his love, now in his colde grave, all one, withouten any company. Farewell, my sweet, farewell, mine Emily, and softly take me in your armes tway, for love of God, and hearken what I say. I have here with my cousin Palamon had strife and rancor many a day agone, for love of you, and for my jealousy. And Jupiter so is my soul gie, to speaken of a servant properly, with all the circumstances truly, that is to say, truth, honor, and knighthead, wisdom, humbless estate, and high kindred, freedom, and all that longeth to that art. So Jupiter have of my soul a part, as in this world right now I know not one so worthy to be loved as Palamon, that serveth you, and will do all his life. And if that you shall ever be a wife, forget not Palamon, the gentle man. And with that word his speech to fail began, for from his feet up to his breast was come the cold of death that had him overnumb. And yet moreover in his armes too the vital strength is lost, and all ago. Only the intellect, withoute more, that dwelled in his heart sick and sore, gan fail, when the heart felt death, dusked his eyen too, and failed his breath. But on his lady yet he cast his eye. His laste word was, "Mercy, Emily." His spirit changed house, and wente there, as I came never, I cannot telle where. Therefore I stint, I am no divinister, of soules find I nought in this register. Name me list not the opinions to tell of them, though that they written where they dwell. Our sight is cold, there Mars his soul aguy. Now will I speak forth of Emily. Shrieked Emily, and howled Palamon, and Theseus his sister took anon, swooning, and bare her from the corpse away. What helpeth it to tarry forth the day, to telle how she wept both eve and morrow? For in such cases women have such sorrow, when that their husbands be from them y-go, that for the more part they sorrow so, or else fall into such malady, that at the last certainly they die. Infinite be the sorrows and the tears of olde folk, and folk of tender years, in all the town, for death of this Theban. For him there weepeth both child and man. So great a weeping was there none certain, when Hector was y-brought, all fresh slain, to Troy. Alas, the pity that was there, scratching of cheeks and rending eke of hair! And haddest gold enough, and Emily. No manner man might gladden Theseus, saving his old father Aegeus, that knew this worlde's transmutation, as he had seen it changen up and down, joy after woe, and woe after gladness, and shewed him example and likeness. Right as there died never man, quoth he, that he ne lived in earth in some degree. Right so there lived never man, he said, in all this world, that sometime be not died. This world is but a thoroughfare full of woe, and we be pilgrims passing to and fro. Death is an end of every worldly sore. And over all this said he yet much more to this effect, full wisely to exhort the people that they should them recomfort. Duke Theseus, with all his busy cure, casteth about where that the sepulture of good Arcite may best imaked be, and eke the most honorable in his degree. And at the last he took conclusion that there as first Arcite and Palamon had for love the battle them between, that in that selve grove sweet and green, there as he had his amorous desires, his complaint, and for love his hotte fires, he would make a fire, in which the office of funeral he might all accomplish, and let anon command to hack and hew the oaks old, and lay them on a rue, in culpons well arrayed for to burn. His officers with swifte feet they run, and ride anon at his commandement. And after this Duke Theseus hath sent after a bier, and it all over spread with cloth of gold, the richest that he had, and of the same suit he clad Arcite. Upon his handes were the gloves white, eke on his head a crown of laurel green, and in his hand a sword full bright and keen. He laid him bare the visage on the bier, therewith he wept, that pity was to hear. And for the people should see him all, when it was day he brought them to the hall, that roareth of the crying and the sound. Then came this woeful Theban, Palamon, with slaughtery beard and ruggy ashy hairs, in clothes black, they dropped all with tears, and passing over weeping Emily, the ruefulest of all the company. And inasmuch the service should be the more noble and rich in its degree, Duke Theseus set forth 3 steeds abring, that trapped were in steel all glittering, and covered with the arms of Dan Arcite. Upon these steeds, that were great and white, there sat a folk, of whom one bare his shield, another his spear in his handes held, the third bare with him his bow Turkish, of brent gold was the case and harness, and ride forth apace with sorrowful cheer toward the grove, as ye shall after hear. The noblest of the Greekes that were there upon their shoulders carried the bier, with slack pace, and eyen red and wet, throughout the city by the master street, that spread was all with black, and wondrous high, right of the same is all the street awry. Upon the right hand went old Aegeus, and on the other side Duke Theseus, with vessels in their hand of gold full fine, all full of honey, milk, and blood, and wine. Eke Palamon with a great company, and after that came woeful Emily, with fire in hand, as was that time the guise, to do the office of funeral service. High labour and full great appareling was at the service, and the pyre making, that with its greene top the heaven wrought, and 20 fathom broad its armes straught. This is to say, the boughs were so broad, of straw first there was laid many a load. But how the pyre was maked up on height, and eke the names how the trees hight, as oak, fir, birch, asp, alder, holm, poplar, willow, elm, plane, ash, box, chestnut, lind, laurel, maple, thorn, beech, hazel, yew, whipple tree. How they were felled shall not be told for me, nor how the gods ran up and down, disinherited of their habitation, in which they wonted had rest and peace, nymphs, fauns, and hamadryads, nor how the beastes and the birdies all fledden for fear when the wood gan fall, nor how the ground aghast was of the light, that was not wont to see the sun bright, nor how the fire was couched first with straw, and then with dry stickes cloven in three, and then with green wood and spicery, and then with cloth of gold, and with perrier, and garlands hanging with full many a flower, the myrrh, the incense, with so sweet odour, nor how Arcite lay among all this, nor what riches about his body is, nor how that Emily, as was the guise, put in the fire of funeral service, nor how she swooned when she made the fire, nor what she spake, nor what was her desire, nor what jewels men in the fire then cast, when that the fire was great and burned fast, nor how some cast their shield and some their spear, and of their vestiments which that they wear, and cuppes full of wine and milk and blood into the fire that burnt as it were wood, nor how the Greeks with a huge rout 3 times ridden all the fire about, upon the left hand with a loud shouting, and thrice with their spears clattering, and thrice how the ladies gan to cry, nor how that led was homeward Emily, nor how Arcite burnt to ashes cold, nor how the like wake was hold all thilke night, nor how the Greekes play. The wake plays ne keep I not to say, who wrestled best naked with oil anoint, nor who that bare him best in no disjoint. I will not tell eke how they all are gone home to Athenes when the play is done, but shortly to the point now will I wend, and maken of my longe tale an end. By process and by length of certain years, all stinted is the mourning and the tears of Greeks, by one general assent. Then seemed me there was a parliament at Athens upon certain points and case, among the which pointes y-spoken was, to have with certain countries alliance, and have of Thebans full obeissance. For which this noble Theseus anon let send after the gentle Palamon, unwist of him that was the cause and why, but in his blacke clothes sorrowfully he came at his commandment on high. Then sente Theseus for Emily. When they were set, and hushed was all the place, and Theseus abided had a space, ere any word came from his wise breast, his eyen set he there as was his lest, and with a sad visage he sighed still, and after that right thus he said his will. The first mover of the cause above, when he first made the fair chain of love, great was the effect, and high was his intent. Well wist he why, and what thereof he meant. For with that faire chain of love he bond the fire, the air, the water, and the lond, in certain bondes, that they may not flee. That same prince and mover eke, quoth he, hath stablished in this wretched world adown certain of days and duration to all that are engendered in this place, over the which day they may not pace. All may they yet their days well abridge, there needeth no authority to allege. For it is proved by experience, but that me list declare my sentence, that may men by this order well discern, that thilke mover stable is and etern. Well may men know, but that it be a fool, that every part deriveth from its whole. For nature hath not ta'en its beginning of no party nor cantle of a thing, but of a thing that perfect is and stable, descending so till it be corruptible. And therefore of his wise purveyance he hath so well beset his ordinance, that species of things and progressions shallen endure by successions, and not etern, withouten any lie. This mayest thou understand and see at eye. Lo, the oak that hath so long a nourishing, from the time that it genneth first to spring, and hath so long a life, as ye may see, yet at the last y wasted is the tree. Consider eke how that the harde stone under our feet, on which we tread and gon, yet wasteth, as it lieth by the way. The broade river sometime waxes stray, the greate townes see we wane and wend. Then may ye see that all things have an end. Of man and woman see we well also, that needes in one of the termes two, that is to say, in youth or else in age, he must be dead, the king as shall a page. Some in his bed, some in the deepe sea, some in the large field, as ye may see. There helpeth nought, all go that ilke way. Then may I say that all a thing must die. What maketh this but Jupiter the king, the which is prince and cause of all a thing, converting all unto his proper will, from which it is derived sooth to tell. And here against no creature alive of no degree availeth for to strive. Then is it wisdom, as it thinketh me, to make a virtue of necessity, and take it well that we may not eschew, and namely what to us all is due. And whoso grudgeth aught, he doth folly, and rebel is to him that all may gie. And certainly a man hath most honour to dien in his excellence and flower, when he is sicker of his good name, then hath he done his friend nor him no shame. And gladder ought his friend be of his death, when with honour is yielded up his breath, than when his name appalled is for age, for all forgotten is his vassalage. Then is it best, as for a worthy fame, to dien when a man is best of name. The contrary of all this is wilfulness. Why grudge we? Why have we heaviness? That good our sight, of chivalry the flower, departed is, with duty and honour, out of this foul prison of this life. Why grudge here his cousin and his wife of his welfare, that loved him so well? Can he them thank? Nay, God wot never deal. That both his soul and eke themselves offend, and yet they may their lustes not amend. What may I conclude of this long serie? But after sorrow I rede us to be merry, and thank Jupiter for all his grace. And ere that we departe from this place, I rede that we make of sorrows two one perfect joy, lasting evermore. And look now where most sorrow is herein, there will I first amenden and begin. Sister, quoth he, this is my full assent, with all the vice here of my parliament, that gentle Palamon, your owen knight, that serveth you with will and heart and might, and ever hath, since first time ye him knew, that ye shall of your grace upon him rue, and take him for your husband and your lord. Lend me your hand, for this is our accord. Let's see now of your womanly pity. He is a kinge's brother's son, pardie, and though he were a poor bachelor, since he hath served you so many a year, and had for you so great adversity, it must be considered, believeth me, for gentle mercy oweth to passen right. Then said he thus to Palamon the knight: I trow there needeth little sermoning to make you assent to this thing. Come near, and take your lady by the hand. Betwixt them was made anon the band that hight matrimony or marriage by all the council of the baronage. And thus with alle bliss and melody hath Palamon y-wedded Emily. And God, that all this wide world hath wrought, send him his love, that hath it dearly bought. For now is Palamon in all his will, living in bliss, in riches, and in hill. And Emily him loves so tenderly, and he her serveth all so gently, that never there was word them between of jealousy, nor of none other teen. Thus endeth Palamon and Emily, and God save all this fair company. End of the Knight's Tale.